In part 2 of my Triumph Street Triple 675 Makeover Series, I'm going to show you how to repair and freshen up your scuffed motorcycle crash protectors. If your bike has been dropped, or if you've unfortunately been in an accident and your bike has hit the road, then if you've got crash protectors fitted to it, then they could be looking a little scuffed up and worse for wear. But don't panic, don't rush out and buy a new set just yet. I'm going to show you how to transform them from this to this. So this R&G crash protector has actually done its job. Although the protector is scuffed, the frame is unmarked. So to start with, I'm going to use a hand file to remove the worst of the damage. But before I do that, here's a tip on the easiest way to grip the protector while you work on it. Now, I think the easiest way to file this down, to start with and polish it, is just loosen that a fraction, turn the slide around so I can get the file to it, and then tighten it back up again. So I'm using a flat metal hand file, and as you can see, I'm just taking my time going over the worst of the damage, making sure I rotate the protector as I go so I can get to the damage at all angles. Now take your time doing this and work on whatever areas of your crash protector is damaged. So I'm pretty certain no two damaged protectors will be the same. That's already looking better. Once I've filed down the worst of the damage, I'm then going to use some wet and dry paper to remove my file marks. So now I'm going to try a little bit of 240 wet and dry. Got some water there just to dunk it into, to see if that cleans it up a little bit more. Okay guys, so let me just explain a little bit about wet and dry paper. Now I don't want to teach you to suck eggs if you know this obviously, but some people don't. So this is my understanding. So wet and dry paper is basically like sandpaper, but a lot smoother. Now you can use it dry, which means it's more abrasive, and if you put it into water, then it becomes less abrasive, smoother. So what I have just done is started off with a file which is pretty coarse to get rid of most of the cuts in this engine protector. Then I've used a 240 to smooth that out, and it's not bad. And now what I'm going to do is I've got some 600 which I've just cut in half. Now the technique that I use is I had some water with some fairy liquid in, and I just soak that in, just dip that into the water. Let's get that out of the way. Dip that in the water, then I get my file and fold it around the file so it's nice and tight. That way I've got a nice flat surface. There we go. I'm going to hold that properly. Now you can see there, that's the end of the file. Now the technique that I use is I put my finger on the end of the file if I'm getting close to some metal or paintwork. That way my hand's going to touch against the frame or the metal first, so I don't want to damage anything around it. I actually do that same technique with socket wrench. In fact, Elyske's husband laughed at me once because I was teaching Elyske how to do something, and I said, make sure that you put your finger on the end there, because if you bang it against the frame and damage the frame or paint, well, your finger can heal first, but your paintwork can't. So good technique. So basically what we do then is hold that file, make sure it's nice and wet, Now this is a 600, so this is just going to smooth out those fire marks and the grit marks, and already that is looking so much better. Now I do have some really fine wet and dry, a 1500, and even I think got a 6000 which I used on my tank. But let's do this stage first, and what I'll do, let me move the camera in a bit closer so you can see what's going on there. But that's my technique for using wet and dry. Right, let's change the paper. I'm just going to put a little bit more water on the wet and dry paper. Get to work. Going to take my time. I'm not pushing too hard on the file. Just moving that around now. Got that flat edge there so I can put a bit more pressure on that. Smooth that out first. Then, it's a good idea to have a cloth nearby actually. A wet cloth so you can wipe that down. But look at that. What a difference. And once you've got it to a certain stage, you can then take your wet and dry paper off of the file. Just do it by hand. Especially if you've got a curve going on around there. So the colours look a bit weird here when the light's in my hand, but you get the idea. Now this is the point where my friend AJ would say, drop in a before and after shot so you can compare it. There we go, so it's not absolutely perfect, like immaculate, it's not far off. And I think once we get polishing up on there, let me get a little bit of water on there. There we go, look. Once we get polishing up on there, that will look as good as new. So now I have to repeat the process on this side. It's not as bad actually. Now, if you have an orbital sanding or polishing mop, then I think that would be best. I started with a small Dremel, but I found the mops too small and they left flat marks. So I dug out a polishing attachment which I could use in my normal drill. Although it threw bits of rag everywhere, it did a great job. For the final finished touch, I just removed the R&G plaque, as we think the more black you have, the better. So what do you think, guys? You've got to remember that all it cost me was the price of a pack of wet and dry paper. All the other tools I actually owned. But if you don't own a file or a polishing mop, then perhaps you could ask a friend if you could borrow theirs. In my next video, I'll show you how to repair and paint motorcycle engine protectors. And if you've never used an aerosol spray paint or rattle can before, I'll share a few of my top tips to get a professional finish. Until then, stay safe and I'll see you soon. Subscribe, like and comment.